from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. It's June 7th, 2021. I'm pre-recording today's Practitioner Brief. I'm still traveling, and so being live is a little bit harder this week, so I do apologize. But thank you so much for tuning in. If you are listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, please make sure to subscribe. And if you're watching us on YouTube or any one of your favorite social media platforms, please make sure to follow the CyberHub podcast page. We've got a loaded show this Monday. It's been an unbelievable busy time. So let's get into it here with just a few announcements. First of all, thank you to KnowBe4, Wistic, and Ativo Networks for their support of our show. And now, without further ado, let's get right into what's going on in the cyber world today. One, GitHub updates its policy to remove exploit code when used in active attacks. So, world-leading code hosting platform GitHub has now taken a different approach and formally announced a series of updates to the site's policies that delve into how the company deals with malware and exploit code uploaded to its service. Essentially, one of the biggest threats to the software supply chain has been these open source repositories that people use from GitHub. Previously, Microsoft, which owns GitHub, have said that they're not really going to get into it, that the community would be able to do this. However, after seeing what's been going on over the last 7 months, it seems like GitHub has taken a change in direction and stating that it will not allow the use of GitHub in direct support of unlawful attacks or malware campaigns that cause harm. The company said it may take steps to disrupt ongoing attacks that leverage the platform as an exploit or a malware content delivery network. To that end, users are refrained from uploading, posting, hosting, or transmitting any content that could be used to deliver malicious executable or abuse GitHub as an attack infrastructure, say by organizing a denial of service attack or managing command and control servers. So this is great news to take downstream to our DevOps teams at this point. This gives us explicit understanding that if we see any malicious code within GitHub, that by contacting them, it will be removed at the source, which allows us to focus on our mitigation, response, and recovery, all very important. There are several things here that people should take a look at. All the links to all the stories are available in the show notes, so make sure you go and you check them out as well. We'll move on to another story today, our second one, where serious vulnerabilities found in the Codesys software used by many ICS products. Researchers have discovered at least 10 vulnerabilities, a majority rated critical or high in severity, in Codesys industrial automation software that's used in many ICS products. Researchers at Russian cybersecurity company Positive Technologies identified the vulnerabilities in various products made by Codesys. They initially found the flaws in a programmable logic controller made by Wago, but further analysis showed that the issues were actually introduced by Codesys software that is used by more than a dozen manufacturers, further PLCs including Beckhoff, Contron, Mahler, Festo, Mitsubishi, Holosys, and several other firms. Some of the vulnerabilities can be exploited only by an authenticated attacker, and if the controller is not protected by a password. But Positive Technology says that some of the weaknesses can be exploited simply by having network access to the targeted device. There's been updates that have been released by Codesys to address these, so please make sure you're updating them if you're impacted by these vulnerabilities. In a story that impacts us all, the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, have limited the scope of the controversial hacking law. In what was a case many of us were following, Van Buren versus the U.S., where a former Georgia police officer was found guilty of violating the Computer Crime Unauthorized Access Act when he accessed law enforcement data in exchange for bribe money. The U.S. Supreme Court has now ruled that the police officer who received money for obtaining data from a law enforcement database for an associate did not violate the controversial federal hacking law. This is a victory for white hat hackers because it limits the law's scope and creates some sort of barrier. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 was violated when allegedly Police Sergeant Nathan Van Buren accessed a database in order to retrieve a license plate in exchange for $6,000 in cash. The ruling, which was not anonymous but rather 6-3 decision, now limits the scope of the CFFA, and that's because Van Buren used his own credentials to access the information, meaning he did not violate the law, which subjects to criminal liability anyone who intentionally accesses a computer without authorization or exceeds authorization access. The court pointed to a number of structural issues with the law, stuff that we've been talking about for quite some time as practitioners. We need to update the law. We need to create more deterrence. This right here is going to force Congress to go back to the drawing board and write a more targeted computer crime, computer abuse act. So we hope that that gets done. And Van Buren obviously wins this one, which could mean that his might be overturned. His conviction might be overturned here, according to some of the stuff. So keep an eye on that. And our next story is the new Evil Corp ransomware mimics PayloadBin gang to evade U.S. sanctions. And like all things, Al-Qaeda can't change its name, and Al-Shabaab can't change their name as terrorist organization, neither can Hamas, but cyber gangs can. And the Evil Corp gang, who's also known as Indrik, Spider, and the Drydex gang, started as an affiliate for the Zeus botnet, and over time they formed a group that's focused on distributing banking Trojans and downloaders called Drydex via phishing email. Now, after being sanctioned by the U.S. government in 2009, ransomware negotiation firms refused to facilitate ransom payment for Evil Corp ransomware attacks to avoid facing fines or legal action from Treasury. So now they've started renaming their ransomware operations to different names, such as Wasted Locker, Hate, and Phoenix to bypass these sections. The threat actors used Phoenix in an attack on insurance firm CNA, which allegedly paid $40 million in ransom. After breaching the Metro Police Department in D.C., stealing unencrypted data, the Baybuck gang said they were quitting ransomware encryption and instead focusing on data theft and extortion. It's lovely how we give these people just platforms. So there's been a new ransomware sample called PayloadBin on VirusTotal that is related to the rebranding of the Babuk locker. And again, these guys can just rebrand, relaunch, evade sanctions. It's going to require a little bit more than that, but keep an eye out for this stuff as well. And you can again see more of these stories on our show notes. And finally, TikTok has updated its privacy policy very, very quietly to collect users' biometric data. TikTok quietly revised its privacy policy in the US, allowing it to automatically collect biometric information such as face prints and voice prints from the content its users post on the platform. The policy change first spotted by TechCrunch went into effect on June 2nd. TikTok users who reside in the European Economic Area, the UK, Switzerland, and other geographics, including India, where the service operates, are exempted from the changes. Only in the US can they get your biometric data and collect it. Besides not clearly defining the exact nature of biometrics being collected or offering a convincing reason as to why this data gathering is necessary in the first place, the vaguely worded language could allow TikTok to amass such sensitive data without users' explicit content. Given that a handful of states are looking at a privacy law, as well as the U.S. federal privacy law are all intact, all pending, we might see this actually change in the months ahead. Folks, that's it for our practitioner brief today. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching today's episode. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite social media platform by looking up the CyberHub podcast. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.